How's it going, YouTube and the judges of the International Quarantine Car Show of 2020? My name is Sam, and this is my 1968 AMC Ambassador. This will be an in-depth video on the car, along with a startup and a few other things. So I guess I'll just take you from the front to the back. If you follow my YouTube channel, you can see the whole car from beginning to end. I bought this car and an exact duplicate of it, except it's a four-door version in, I think it was 2015 or 14. I don't remember anymore. I just know that I was 16 years old, so that's about 5 years ago now. So when I bought the two, the story behind them was the old man that owned them, his wife was getting on his ass because she wanted to build a flower garden where they were parked. And so she said, if you don't get rid of them, I'm going to send them to the scrap pile. So I came with the intention of just buy this one right here, but after some talking, he said if you buy both, I'll sell them to you for $250 a piece. So I bought both cars for $500, and you know, my father was with me that day, and he said, Sam, you can't pass that up. So that's how I got both. This one's been my main focus. It's got a 290 AMC V8. This exact car, the Ambassador series, is kind of a hard one to find. They only made this body style for 2 years. AMC had that problem with like changing their body styles up a lot, but the engines kind of stay the same. So the 290 is here. What I've done to it is it's got a bit more of a mild cam thrown in it. You can watch my YouTube channel and see some of the videos of me taking it down and replacing the cam. I had the block honed at a shop because I just didn't want to. I don't trust myself with that kind of responsibility. I'm not good enough for that. But everything else from the top, you know, the top end, you can see me. I replaced the rockers, push rods, all that other shit. It's got the Edelbrock air gap intake, and then just a basic Holley. I got it used from eBay. You know, I cheaped out where I could, and I bought new where I could, and a lot of this is just a bunch of confuculation. So some pretty cool parts underneath. You know, I spent the $200 for like a really high performance oil pump, but then I decided to reuse my thermostat housing and reuse the same bolts for a bunch of shit. This thing's held on by zip ties and hope. When I start it up, you're gonna see the I sheared out some of the freaking engine mounts so they don't torque all the way, so this thing shakes like a motherfucker, but I don't care. What else? Transmission electric kickdown, you don't need that, so that's gone. What else we got? Reuse the filter, or actually this was like, I don't know what this was actually for, but it fit the oil breather cap, so there it goes, on it goes. Same radiator, didn't bother changing that. I think you're supposed to have your coolant overflow go into like a tank or something like that. This thing just drips it right on the ground because I guess fuck the environment or something. I do plan on getting a Jack Daniels bottle for that thing, because I think it's probably a bad idea to have your coolant just leak, you know, overflowing into the floor. This is my Dixie horn setup, angle bracket from Ace Hardware, just some scrap that we had lying around. Yeah, air horns on eBay, used. They sound pretty good, can't complain too much. This bezel's missing on this side, unfortunately. What else can I take you through? It had an electric fuel pump. It was causing a lot of problems, and I didn't like the way it sounded, so I replaced it with a mechanical one. The fuel line is expertly ran through the frame, and you know, I gotta make sure it doesn't rub up against anything, so I wrapped a pair of blue jeans around the line with some duct tape and some zip ties, and that holds it in there so it doesn't vibrate on the metal and chafe a hole. Get a little closer in on that action, I'll show you. Oh yeah, right in there, that's beautiful. I found a pair of shocks. I think the actual shocks for these are not this, but I made these fucking work because that's what you do. What else we got? scoring number 1 on safety for the car. The rebuilt drum cylinders for the front and rears, they are not the right size. They're too small. So in order to prevent the old ones from leaking, I actually ran some zip ties around the old ones. It does the job. So expert safety. I hope you guys enjoy. And let me see what else I can take you guys through on this thing. So not really pertaining to the car much, but this is the shop that I used it in. Currently, it's serving as a mini bar for me to get plastered during this quarantine, so that's why it looks the way it does. But, you know, this is where all the magic happened. Just basic hand tools. The only thing I bought was the Princess Auto Harbor Freight engine hoist, and got the job done, so it hasn't killed me yet. Ultimately, the saddest thing about this build is the car was beautiful, and it had a fresh thing of paint put on it. And then when being towed on trailer by a company, because I don't have a lowboy or anything to put it on, they got in an accident. Somebody cut off the truck and they slammed on the brakes and the thing got hit. So that whole door had to get pulled out, and now I've got all this jacked up paint and body work I got to do. Obviously, naturally, I don't know anything about body work, so we just threw some rust reformer over it and called it a day. Maybe eventually I'll get to actually doing body work on it, but we'll see. Inside, the carpet and all the seats and all the vinyl was ruined. It sat in the California sun for about 25 years before I got to it, and it was all gone, and there was no saving it. That was probably the saddest part, is that this car would never have the ability to be a all original car. So I took some carpet from a discount carpet store they were throwing out, and I self-tapped screws into it to hold it in place, and that does the job just fine. Haven't painted the roof yet, and then I just painted the whole fucking console black. Let me show you my expert instrument cluster setup we got here. So the whole thing is just held in with some zip ties. I've got this amazing intricate zip tie job, and that's what holds in all my gauges. So yeah, you got everything in there you need. Oil pressure, coolant, you know, the basics. 90% of the shit on this doesn't even fucking work. Fuel gauge in the actual cluster doesn't work. Neither does temperature sensor, so I had to get an aftermarket one of those anyway. The thing is literally just a hodgepodge of parts that I had, and in my 16, 17-year-old mind, I did what I could. Since the rebuild, I didn't top off ATF high enough, so I've had to add a little bit more in. So that's why that's there. Let's talk about the exhaust real quick while we're on that subject. So it's got those Hooker short tube headers on it, which didn't clear the transmission inspection tube, so I had to wrap the inspection tube with some heat insulator to keep it from getting too hot. I'll probably have to wrap the exhaust in it too, just to try and help with some of that stuff. This car was, you know, dual exhaust to like a Y right underneath before the transmission, and then now it's got this whole thing set up down here, so not exactly meant for it. So what we got here, this is my professional exhaust insulator, you know, gives it just a little bit of wiggle room, and then just dumps on the ground. That one over there, I haven't had the money yet to put a fancy schmancy tip on for the exhaust, so when I get around to that, I will. As you notice, the entire bottom of this car is pretty rust free, and by pretty rust free I mean there is no rust at all. The whole thing sounds just like, you know, wonderfulness subframe car, so the body is the structure. I kind of regret doing the underliner on it. I know a lot of folks say that you can have issues with it actually rusting from underneath, but when I bought the car, it didn't have any rust underneath, so then I rolled it on. It's like that truck bed liner shit. And it seems to do a pretty good job. I haven't had any issues with it, but I kind of wish I didn't, because if I could do it over, I would just paint it. But you do what you gotta do. Next, we move on to the excellent sway bar. set up down there. It's one of those universal kits, literally just drilled through the fucking trailing arms, and it just mounts up with bolts. Hasn't actually caused me any problems, and I have noticed a large difference in performance as far as taking turns and stuff. This thing used to handle a lot more boaty, and now it handles a lot more firm. Up in there we got our set of new coil springs that were done almost when I first bought the car, because it was all bagged out in the rear, and then those are some coil over shocks. I think I got those again used, or maybe I bought them new from Summit Racing. I can't remember anymore. The fuel line system is, since I suck with the bending actual fuel line, this whole thing is liquid propane gas line, which is 3/8, and I just ran it all the way up to the car. Some might say that's dangerous. Personally, I mean, now I know where the fuel line is. It's a bright yellow stainless steel braided line, or well, not braided, but stainless steel line, so you know, it does the job. One of the first things I did at this car was I put these beautiful Grand Prix tires and steely rims on there, and I think that really completed the look for this car. This thing looks stout when it drives down the road, especially with it being a two-door. It's got those beautiful lines that kind of come up and over the fenders, and it's got the classic Coca-Cola bottle rear end on those tail lights. There you go. Beautiful thumbnail. Of course, the obligatory, I know Zip Tie said he wanted some tits to help with judging this thing, so all I got for you is my beautiful sticker here. This car is a big body car, and so I think it was appropriate that we name her according to her size. And you know, I think big is beautiful, and this car is a testament to that. So for all the haters that hate on big women, you can just shut the fuck up. So that's how I say about that. In the trunk we got the car cover, simple racing fuel cell. You don't need a rollover vent. I just plugged both with a piece of hose. There's the old electric fuel pump. I just don't really care to take it out anymore. Wonderful RTV job in a gasket around this thing, you know, because we don't want this chafing through the frame. My last plan for this thing is I wanted to try and find a way to tie in the old fuel fill into this tank. So maybe I'll get around to figuring that out. I don't know how I'll do it, but you figure it out. Suffice to say, if it wasn't at all obvious before, this is a completely impromptu video, and I have not the YouTube type of person, and I'm not really a camera type person either, so apologies for the rambling and incoherent phrases and words I'm using, but I just move tools, man. I don't talk. So I guess I'll go ahead and start it up for you so you can take a good look at it and hear it run and listen to all its beautiful glory. So here we are in the car, and the one other thing I forgot to mention is the brake booster has a leak in it, so I had to plug up the plug for it. That way, it was killing the engine when I parked it. When you come to a stop at a stop sign, because the vacuum leaks. So I plugged that up. Personally, I don't think you really need it anyway. I can stop this thing without power brakes. It's just a 4,000-pound car. You don't need power brakes. Sometimes she's a little cold. It's like 36 degrees out right now, so I got the choke out. We'll see how well she runs at first. And I also had to disconnect the battery because if you let it, for some reason it's got a drain in it and it likes to drain out power. So let's give her a little crank and we'll see how she sounds. Obligatory send, of course. Oh yeah, she sounds just fine. Oh, she's gonna die. Look at that, we got 50 psi at idle. Oh yeah, we're all right. You don't need to warm it up. I should also mention that the brake and engine oil is still running in this thing. I should probably get around to changing that out. I think I've got about 200 miles on the rebuild, so it's about time to you know, change out fluids. Here you can see her purring in all her glory. She shakes like an old lady with polio. Sexy. But of course, this video wouldn't be complete without a obligatory Dixie horn send. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you liked.